Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon in some parts of the world, I guess. Lots of people joining from different parts of the world. Good morning. My name is Namita Datta. I'm Program Manager of Solutions for Youth Employment. It's a global program that's based here in the World Bank, and it focuses on youth employment. We have a large number of partners. We have about 45 different NGOs that are doing pretty innovative things all over the world. And we come together as a network to learn from each other and sort of almost learn from each other's innovations. We also have about 35 to 40 private sector companies. That's another part of our network. These are, most of them are fairly large corporates. A lot of them are technology companies because of the importance of technology in the jobs agenda. And then we have another part of our network, which is called the Youth Advisory Group. These are 17 young people that regularly bring in youth voice in whatever SPY does, as it's a really critical component. And then the last bit of it is the internal part in the World Bank group, as youth employment is spread across the bank group with different teams interested in this agenda, whether it's agriculture or urban development or digital development or social protection and jobs. So several teams, and we sort of internally also help, S4Y helps to coordinate the internal learning within the World Bank group as well. Um, the topic of today's webinar is something very close to our heart in S4Y. When we did look at evidence in terms of what makes a youth employment program effective, one of the things that was pretty clear, and for all of you on the webinar today, it's a no-brainer that the more programs are closely aligned to the specific constraints that youth face, and youth is not a homogeneous group themselves. I mean, different groups, different types of groups, youth have different types of constraints. So young women may have different constraints, young a refugee population may have different constraints. Young people in rural areas may have a whole new set of constraints that we in who are designing programs we need to be aware of. And the thing is not just about looking at our young people as beneficiaries of our programs, but also engaging youth in designing the solutions themselves. And this is an area that we found completely fascinating in terms of just how even during COVID, young people are coming up with lots of innovative solutions to dealing with the problem. And we've done a few blogs just highlighting how there's a lot of innovation coming out of young people. So one of the things clear to us is that the more a youth employment program is listening to youth, engaging with youth, involving youth in co-designing programs, the better that program is going to be. But how does one do it? I mean, there are so many issues in terms of designing what is called an effective youth engagement. As you can imagine, it's just not enough to have a focus group or just not enough to do a survey. It's just not also enough to just do something when you're in the beginning of the rollout or you have to apply for a donor grant. How do you keep that engagement going on throughout the process, iterating it, tweaking your program design, listening to young people? And then how do you also then later track what happened to the young people that you worked with? So it's a complex design issue. And what we are hoping to discuss today is exactly that. Like, how does one actually do it? And in particular, these challenging times where it's really hard to assemble, let's say, a small focus group in a room and just have an open brainstorming. How do you do that? And so what we're finding among our partners is just some interesting ideas in terms of how they're using technology to keep this live conversation going with youth. So I'm so excited that two of our partners agreed to join us in this very informal conversation today. They represent two really interesting organizations. The first one is Educate. Educate is a nonprofit. It works mainly in Uganda, Kenya, and Rwanda, and does very interesting work on the skills issue, but they also go deeper and work with schools and look at the education, how education is being treated in some of these countries. And then also they will have very interesting ways of working with the government. And this is one organization that has taken a few of their innovations to scale in Rwanda particularly, but I think in the other countries as well. The other organization is Africa Voices Foundation, which has a really interesting history. This is an organization that really came out of research that was being done by the University of Cambridge for 4 years, and then and that research was on engagement, citizen engagement. And then as time went by, this research actually led to the creation of an independent nonprofit organization that's called Africa Voices Foundation that does really interesting things with their SMS platform, and they are headquartered in Kenya. So I'm delighted that we have two really interesting panelists today, and we're hoping to have a good conversation. So welcome, Emmanuel. Emmanuel Kaliebi is Senior Program Manager at Educate. And Samuel Kimo is the Executive Director of Africa Voices Foundation. So I'm going to hand it over to the two panelists to kickstart the conversation. But before I do that, I want to turn to Cavell, who is part of the S4Y team. Cavell Joseph is leading the work with on the Youth Voice agenda, and she also coordinates with our Youth Advisory Group. So Cavell, maybe we can just kick off with you sharing just a few things in terms of what S4Y has done to make sure that we are listening to youth and incorporating the Youth Voice agenda. And maybe just quickly kick it off, Cavell, and then I'm going to invite Emmanuel.
Yes, thank you very much, Namita. So just a quick announcement. I am recording this webinar. So for everyone else who is not participating as a panel, we ask that you have your microphone on mute as well as have your video turned off. Thank you very much. I will now share my screen where I will give the presentation. One moment.
Well, you can go to slideshow and then so that the whole screen comes up.
Is the whole screen coming up now?
No, it's showing your notes, but anyway, go ahead, I guess.
Okay, so one of the things, how has S4Y really approached with dealing with youth engagement? Our team has really started this process from prior to me joining the group, with where we formed a youth advisory group. And these are 17 young people that have been a part, that are across the globe. And in addition, we also, as part of our youth engagement strategy, we have facilitated a collaboration between students, researchers from Yale University and the World Bank Group. We've also had where we have coordinated interactive workshops. We've also created a Youth Voices page. As well as we had our youth advisory group blogs that Namita mentioned earlier this year as well. And then we also had where we published our knowledge brief on how technology is being, sorry, 1 second. For the person who has just joined, can you put yourself on mute? That would be greatly appreciated. So I just was getting an echo. And also our team has really developed as well, in addition to the knowledge brief, 2 how-to notes where we showcase how organizations can really take a step-by-step approach to incorporating youth voice. So as I mentioned, we have this youth advisory group, and before COVID, one of the things, this group was created in 2019, where we gathered some of our partners from S4YE who helped choose out of 40 applications, 17 really unique individuals who are doing on the ground work with regarding to youth initiatives and creating employment opportunities for young people. And they vary from where they manage issues regarding to gender, technology, and agriculture. And they really help our team with the design of our employment programs. They also work alongside our partners as well to really get their feedback into our own initiatives. So before COVID-19, one of the things that our YAG members was able to do was they were able to provide input into the World Bank's World Development Report. And this is a major report by the World Bank and specifically the jobs team to analyze how is the world going in terms of development issues. So that report was launched in October 2019. And again, this is where we really try to get their feedback as to the report itself. Since COVID-19, one of the things that we felt was really important was to get youth feedback on how they were managing the crisis. But what we really discovered was they were not only just help trying to manage the crisis, but they were coming up with really innovative, unique solutions on the ground. So we tried to showcase that by publishing 4 blogs. One was on how our YAG member Sherry Antiliano was reducing food waste in the Philippines. Another was the second one was with Gulkan Yala, where she was helping to provide online training for young people to be able to adapt to COVID in terms of digital skills. And also to web development, because these are areas that have really come at the forefront since COVID, the whole transition to a digital economy. Another aspect is that we saw young people being involved in the healthcare, where they were creating masks, they were creating sanitary items, especially when there were shortages in their own countries. And the last way that we saw young people really engaged from our YAG members was the use of social media. And the fact that has helped with bringing other young people that they are in their own communities to share their own experiences, to bring to the forefront their own solutions as well, and to really get those young people's voices into youth employment programs. So in addition to the blogs, S4YE has also had where we partnered with Yale University, where they for three or 4 months they looked at employment programs in Jordan, Liberia, and South Africa. And the analysis for this study was showcased in a report that we published called Meeting the Challenges of Youth Employment, that was published last year. But this year, we continue to really get youth-led research engagement by publishing our recently published knowledge brief, which shows how our partners have been integrating young people and youth voice into their programs and how they have been utilizing technology. And this is why we had this webinar, because 2 of our partners from this knowledge brief have decided to continue to share that information and knowledge with us. And the last aspect that I would share is that we also have our new how-to notes, which will be published soon. And as I mentioned, this is really a quick step-by-step guide for practitioners. And so far we've created 2 of these how-to notes. One is how to include the youth voice in employment programs, a 4-step approach, so a general aspect of how to include young people's voice. And then the second one is really going into more the technical aspects of how to design an SMS outreach strategy, because what we've noticed is that, it's very easy to just, say that you're including youth voice, but how do you go about in a step-by-step approach of doing that through an SMS platform? So we really try to break it down really as straightforward as possible and make it really short. So unlike our knowledge briefs that are longer, these how-to notes are shorter. So that is really how S4Y has really tried to integrate young people in our initiatives and our along with our partners as well. And now I would hand it off to the two speakers today. So first, Samuel will be speaking for the Educate team, and then we will have Emmanuel speaking for the Africa Voices team. Thank you very much.
Emmanuel?
All right, thanks,
way around, right, Emmanuel? You will share with us Educate's experience, right? Are you there?
Yes, yes, I'm here. I'll be speaking about the Educate experience. I hope it's a good day wherever you are. My name is Emmanuel Kaliebi. I work with Educate and I bring you greetings from Kampala. Very excited to be here to share with you how we've incorporated actually youth voices in our programming. I don't know if you're able to see.
Do you have any slides? Okay, you are going. Okay, thank you. And the other thing, sorry to interrupt you, Emmanuel, but I wanted to say to all the participants that if you have questions, please feel free to use the chat box, and I'll keep track of the questions as they come in. Sorry, go ahead, Emmanuel, please.
All right, so yeah, I'm delighted to be here to share with you what we've done to incorporate youth voices during COVID and beyond. But I think to start, I want to just give you a bit of a background on who we are as Educate. So Educate prepares youth in Africa with skills to succeed in today's economy. And we tackle youth employment by partnering with schools and governments to design and deliver solutions that equip young people in Africa with the skills to attain further education, overcome gender inequities, start businesses, get jobs, and drive development in their communities. Our goal is to design skills-based education and employment solutions which impact youth outcomes sustainably, but also at scale. So our original flagship model was designed youth input from the start, and as well as input from other key stakeholders like parents, teachers, government, education officials. We did conduct hours of interviews to learn about what the biggest challenges were for these different stakeholders and the needs of the students, and so design the model based on that feedback. The way that model is structured is that it is 100 hours learning experience for youth that takes place directly in schools with a skills course delivered in person by a highly trained mentor. Now, just a bit of a background. This is how our flagship in-school model is actually structured. It has three core components. It has the course, the skills, and it has the club and mentorship, and then it has assessment. So these three core components are delivered weekly for a year, and also do provide opportunity to practice new skills in the students' business clubs with the support of a trained mentor, and the practical assessment just capture and measure learning. And really the skills that we share are some of these things, as you can see. We have a business employability skills, and then we have 21st century soft skills that are applicable across different industries. Now, we've seen some impact from our model that we ran. So pre-COVID, we were working with 850 plus schools across Uganda. That's about 25% of all the schools, impacting over 30,000 youth as educate scholars. We also did actually conduct randomized control trials, 2 of them. And at the end of the secondary school, the participants were earning double the income of their peers. We did do a follow-on 4 years, an evaluation follow-on 4 years. The students had graduated, and what we discovered is there was improvement in grit, creativity, self-efficacy, but also the program was able to impact gender-related outcomes. Fewer sexual partners, fewer children, improved agency, and more egalitarian views for the young people that did participate, and less domestic violence. Also, what we realized that it was able to increase secondary school completion. There was increased enrollment for young women in tertiary institutions, and a greater likelihood for them to actually choose a higher earning major for higher institutions. So those are some of the results that we did see in our program just pre-COVID. Now, coming back to this image, I think this is how we are implementing this flagship model for 10 years prior to the pandemic. And the model is based on activities implemented directly in schools. Therefore, the closure of schools for us and the countrywide lockdown that happened meant that we were effectively out of business. And so we had to completely pivot our mechanisms of delivery and almost every aspect of our operations. So what's the new approach that we adopted due to COVID? So when schools in March, we went into product development and we organized sprints to identify ways on how we can actually serve youth during this time, because as you all know, the work that we do for youth employment has never been any more important actually than right now during the pandemic. And so from March to June, we did conduct extensive research, including surveying youth about the biggest needs and challenges, as well as learning about what would be the best practices from other peer organizations, and also just learning from previous crises that had happened. So the programs and design teams did focus on running small experiments and pilots to test different learning solutions, long distance learning solutions that we had identified. And these experiments included testing strategies like we did try out robocalls, we did try out SMS learning prompts, we piloted radio lessons in specific geographical areas, among many other things that we did. We also did invest quite time in building platforms needed for these solutions to be implemented. So we did collect contact information from young people and parents, and doing outreach to them about participating in the activities, building the SMS technology platforms that we were using, but also converting our curriculum into radio lesson scripts and designing a new monitoring strategy for our program. The primary focus for us really was building and testing. During this building and testing time was collecting feedback from young people. First, about what challenges they were experiencing currently and the support that they needed. And as well, collecting feedback about how the solutions we had developed were working for them, so that we can better iterate on how they are structured so that they can better serve them. So based on what we learned, we worked in and based on those things that we realized to work, we did unify the strategies into a distance learning model that you can see on your screen for this period, the coronavirus era. And so you can think about this as an adapted model, as the virtual version of a flagship program that we were doing before COVID, with the same 3 core components delivered rather in a new way, as you can see. So a radio, with a radio skills course, a virtual mentorship on phone, and SMS and phone-based assessments and engagement. And so we really see this as a digitization of our school model. And our plan and hope is that we can integrate some of the key features and the best things that we've seen to work into our long-term, long-term program for an even greater impact and sustainability for the program. These are some of the things that we were, I think, just give you a bit of a hint on some of the posters. This is a VIP program with 3 levels that students were going through, and each level. So this is designed to take less time compared to our original flagship program, but with different levels geared towards developing different aspects among these young people. So leadership foundations, with key mission on community service action, or an innovation lab, or an incubator. And this is just how the young people were signing up using that system. So these are some of the things that our young people did. These are some of the community service action that the young people actually did take as part of being within the program. So they undertook activities to try and create awareness or provide some solutions to challenges that they were seeing around their communities as they were home. And then, as you can see, this is just a preview for you around the 2-way communication or direct feedback that we've been getting from our young people. So we've been using those conference calls for one-on-one outreaches, using social media to try and garner as much knowledge and learn about the youth experience and their experience with some of these technology tools and solutions that we had provided. Providing some learning prompts through SMS. I don't know whether you can see that picture really well, but in that picture, I just scooped up some messages that we were getting from some of our young people. One of them is, how they sign up using USSD, and they can select and receive support on anything. Then they were giving us a lot of feedback, useful information through SMS about the radios, about the availability, and that we were able to structure some of the aspects of our program depended on the feedback we are getting from them, or that we are getting from them. So some of the things I think we've been concretely that we've been able to actually change as a result of that youth feedback we're getting. One is the learning style. So the youth told us they wanted more interactive lessons. So we did change the way our lessons were structured to be more story-based, where we have characters in dialogue, because the youth told us that actually they preferred that way of that learning style and way of structuring our lessons. So we also did incorporate some learning checks where learners actually could respond via SMS and offer prizes to those that actually are actively participating, as a way of to just make sure we are driving their participation and engagement. We did provide some prizes to incentivize their participation along rather their participation and engagement. The other thing that we learned was gender equity. So the female learners told us that the rigidity of the lesson times that we had created made attendance very difficult for them. And so one thing we realized that when we did conduct our surveys, that we learned that actually COVID had exacerbated the time and learning gaps for young women. And so they were having less time in the day to do learning, because many of them had increased responsibilities with household chores. And so the boys in the model are more likely to own phones than girls. That's something that we learned. So as a result, what we did is to facilitate an all-girls conference call where they can freely speak and also just hear from their own experiences, and offering, and also what we did was to make sure that we offer some flexibility around the lessons. So offering the same lessons at more times throughout the day, so that these young women can connect at times when they are available, and also connecting these youth, our young people, one-on-one with some of the mentors, so that they can reach out to someone in case they missed a lesson, and they can obtain that support that they really need. The other area where we actually incorporated a lot of the youth feedback or participation. So we learned from the SMS feedback that informing our youth caregivers made it easier for youth to use phones and participate. And so what we did is that just making a phone call to the parents or guardians of these young people that are staying with them during the lockdown increased our participation by almost 29%. Because one thing we learned is that actually the majority of some of the young people, especially young women, don't handsets. And so we input a very deliberate effort in trying to target those that are there for them. So what have we realized after doing this? So 100 youth have been reached currently through the Educate's learning, rather distance learning model across all the 3 countries where we operate. 20,000 youth are registered with Educate Experience on Air, lessons in Uganda, and 85% of our young people are participating as secondary school students, while 15 of these actually out of school. Youth were not previously participating in Educate before the pandemic. We have also been able to run 20 skills-based lessons and activities, including learning prompts with assessments delivered through SMS. We've had over 3,300 young people enroll into our intensive virtual mentorship experience, what we call the VIP program so far. And also from the recent survey that we conducted, the youth participating told us that 55% of them were able to write vision statements for their businesses that they wanted to start, and 84% believe that they already had access to resources for them to start to become entrepreneurs. So they didn't need to be very wealthy for them to be able to do that. And 70% say that they were feeling very excited and in charge about starting small businesses. Thank you so much. I'll return Mike back to you, Kavayo.
Thank you so much, Emmanuel. That was really fascinating. And it also shows your organization's grit in being able to respond to the challenges. So I have one question in the chat box is really about what percentage of the youth that you were working with had access to phones. And then just a couple points from me, because I don't see more questions in the chat box. Is that how did you make sure? I mean, were your instructors already trained to use technology? You know, I mean, I'm impressed how quickly you pivoted, which means even on the instructor side, they must have had the capability. And then the last question from my side is I mean, one of the things that we are hearing is the importance, apart from soft skills, is through COVID, is helping youth with emotional resilience. And I wonder if that's incorporated in your phone calls where you do the mentoring. But if anybody else has questions, please feel free to put it in the chat box, or if you want to unmute yourself, and I'll just and while you get your question in the chat box, I'm going to turn it back to Emmanuel to answer the questions that came in already.
Right. Thanks, Namita. So on the first round, percentage of youth with phones. So we had an advantage that right from the onset, as we were setting up, most of the young people who were targeting in school, and so we did collect phone contacts of the youth, but I think we got these contacts from schools, and so I mean, I think we currently trying to do a survey to just understand how many of actually those young people are behind those phones. But one thing I think that is coming out clear is that majority of the phones are owned by parents. That's something I think that's just come through quite frequently, especially if, and this is especially so with young women. Majority of the phones are owned by their parents. So most of the young people don't have access to the phones, especially girls. But because there is a phone existing in the home, we have a point of contact that we can use. Then, in terms of instructor, so I think you're very right. One thing that we did as part of our adaptation was as well to use a technology that's very simple to use. So SMS is something that young people already use, and also using voice call and conference call. It's something that we've been using within the program. And so really what was required from us is to ensure that we, again, went over, trained a lot of the mentors that we work with. We work with 330 mentors in Uganda, for instance. so just train them, mocked up how to use this technology, and how to make sure that you actually leveraging the different tricks that you can do to use this technology. Something I think that I didn't mention. The other thing that we also did learn, I think, as we implement, actually for some of the tools that we use, there was a requirement for us actually to reach out to the youth and run some sort of trainings around how to interact with some of the tools that we're using. So we had some of the mentors make calls to some of the youth and just take them through, one, build a relationship with them, but for starters, before we introduce the technology, but also to take them through how to respond to prompts and how to use the different technologies that we're deploying for them to use. I think you rightly observe through our engagement with the young people, I think that's something that we've also observed, the necessity to make sure that we are providing emotional support because of the anxiety and the different things that young people are experiencing. And so how we're mitigating that is to create these spaces where they can actually talk one-on-one, so they can have that space with the mentors and get advice on any issues that they might be experiencing during this time of the pandemic. Back to you, Namita.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Another very interesting question on disability inclusion, and whether you were able to have certain features in your in your outreach which were friendly for people who had disabilities. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold this question because these are really interesting questions coming in. I'm going to let Samuel talk about their experience and then come back to some of these questions. But these are really great. Samuel, are you? But thank you so much, Emmanuel. We'll come back with these questions. Samuel, you're also connected, right? And
yes, I am.
On your camera, and if you want to share any slides.
Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. I'm just trying to be sure that you can hear me and you can see the slides. Great.
Yes to both.
Great. I work with the Africa's Voices Foundation, and Namita has explained what we are about. I'll just go through a quick introduction to say that AVF was born out of research out of Cambridge University, and we are an organization that uses technology, media, and telecoms to create a platform for citizen engagement. So we deploy data and technology on the one side, engagement and media on the other side, and analyze the data that comes from that interaction for purposes of creating a platform for engagement. The way it works is that we curate radio programs, generate an SMS shortcode, and then have conversations on radio that then allow citizens to interact with a guest in studio. We send out a question one at a time and ask for citizens' views on that question. We receive our engagement through the SMS that we harnessed into our data pipeline, where we analyze using social science methods, as it were. So in the end, then you end up with a research product or insights that would give you a very good view of what it is that citizens are thinking about a particular issue. Once we do that, we have another capability where we can now engage one-to-one, and I'll come to that in a moment. But basically, I am just going to share our experiences with a project that we've done on youth employment with the partnership of the MasterCard Foundation, and basically to show how that has worked in our context. I think when we are working with young people, we realize that it is important to engage the youth where they are and where they are to be found. And through SMS, we have an open forum that allows a wide range of audience, which by virtue of demographics consists of youth. We also work with media partners that connect with the youth. And in our context, we have worked with Ghetto Radio, Radio Jambo, and Radio Citizen. When we were selecting the topics and questions to drive engagement, we work with the youth audience to identify what is important for them so that we can focus on issues that they are concerned about. The way our project worked was that we started with a process of formative research, conducting focus group discussions with youth from informal settlements, in vocational training and in college, and conducted key informant interviews with MasterCard Foundation partners to better understand their needs and challenges, and to test the process of using SMS conversations to engage youth across a project lifecycle. We designed a proxy project in which our implementing partner, in this case, Spatial Collective, would play a role of foundation partner. And the proxy project culminated in an event on employment and skills, which had been actively designed around the responses of youth through SMS conversations and building up to the event. And the learnings from the proxy project laid the basis for a road test of AVF solution. We collaborated with our partners to develop a viable live employment of our capability. And the success of this live employment deployment at a national scale enabled us to think boldly in a final learning and evaluation phase about the various use cases for this capability and an appropriate scale of ambition for seeing its impact realized. This project, I need to underline, helped us to see the possibility and the need to develop our much acclaimed one-to-one conversation model. I think there are three learnings that we derived from this work. And while the learning report provides a far more detailed account, the key learnings that we derived from this exercise can be categorized into three. The first one is on engagement. And here this is looking at what makes this approach successful for the youth. And the key questions that we asked were, will youth engage with an SMS platform like we were offering? And would the SMS channel enable quality engagement? Also, what would youth think of such an engagement channel? I think the second dimension of learning was on partner utility. And here, it's about what makes this approach successful for a project. And the key question was, can SMS interactions generate credible and relevant insights to improve program delivery? The last dimension is on the platform design. And the issue here was what social technical design is required to concretely achieve these successes. And the question was, can an open SMS channel be structured so it can deliver the kinds of interactions that can support insights in a timely manner for different use cases. I have talked about the one-to-one capability, which I must again emphasize was derived from this project that was focusing on youth employment. And it is something that we were working with our partners to help explore the potential for one-to-one conversations. It allowed us to perceive and explore the potential for one-to-one conversations. And we got down to work with the plan that by November this year, which is around this time, we would have the capability for one-to-one conversations being in use. But with the onset of COVID, our clock was accelerated and we deployed the capability from March of 2020 in a very rapid manner with great results. And I think the positioning of this capability within our traditional offering is that our method builds on public engagement around media spaces, while new technology allows us to engage with citizens, including young people, on one-to-one basis. The way it works is that we receive the engagement on radio, on SMS, often during a radio show, and then we will pick those conversations into a pipeline, and we have the capacity to engage one-to-one to scale. So that is something that we have deployed for a better part of this year. And this platform, we have called it Katikati. In Kiswahili, that means in between. And I'll explain why in between. And the slide on the screen shows you how this works. Katikati is basically made out of 4 modules that consists of configurators, tools for conversation, tools for comprehension, and trackers. And essentially, the way we can summarize what Katikati is all about is for you to imagine being able to convene and curate individual conversations with many thousands of people communicating personally, yet comprehending at scale. So Katikati gives organizations such as ourselves the communicative power to unlock the that lies in between, or Katikati, of them and the people that matter to them. So those are the 4 models that we use, and you can see how they interact with one another in that next slide. And it allows for deeper conversations. We've done a couple of hundreds of conversations on Katikati, both in Kenya and in Somalia since the COVID came in. And just to illustrate how our capability has worked during COVID, we are currently deploying our platform, the Citizen Social Accountability platform that we have developed essentially for purposes of governance. And we are working with UNDP to create effective channels for engagement to facilitate the social, to facilitate conversations that allow citizens to share their views on how they have experienced health services during COVID. And we are using this to strengthen public accountability and integrity systems, which is also the name of the project that we are implementing with UNDP. And in terms of the demographics that we are engaging with, our experience is that the technology and the innovation we have is popular with the youth. The bulk of our engagement has been with the youth. And if you look at what is on the screen there, you will notice that we have a gender distribution of 25% female and 74.5% male. But in terms of age, 51.8% of the engagement we've had until last week for this project has been the youth, people between the age of 18 and 35. I think this is something that is replicated in most of our projects. I think this is probably the minimum number, the minimum percentage of youth that we have engaged with in any project. In some cases, like in Somalia, the percentage goes above 60% of people being between 18 and 35 years. So that's just an example on the screen of some of the voices that we are getting from citizens, who again, as I said, are majority youth. This is a project, this is a voice from Siaya, which is in the western side of Kenya, expressing a view around education during COVID. This is Somalia, Imakal, which is essentially a platform that we've created for purposes of programming on gender equality and social inclusion, and which we have pivoted and applied for COVID-19 response for the last couple of months. And again, as you can see, we have a percentage of young people that is pretty high, as I indicated. You have women, in this case, accounting for about 63.9 of the respondents that we've engaged with are women and between the age of 18 and 35, and 65.4 are men between that same age. So you can see that this is a project that is very youth responsive. That is another voice of a 23-year-old woman in Somalia, giving her views about the importance of engaging the youth. I think in terms of the challenges, which are also lessons for operating a model for stabilizing and scaling SMS platform, I think the challenge as well as the lesson is that we need to balance between ownership, insights, replicability, and data protection. And in terms of ownership, we must ensure there is buy-in from partners, that there is value for programs, and independence of platform operations and analysis. On insights, we must balance how to scale open-ended engagement with youth and still deliver timely and robust evidence that is acted upon. And in this case, open-ended in our case is important because we don't use the traditional social science method of closed-ended question, because we have the capability to analyze this data rather rapidly and at scale. We don't constrict what respondents give us on the SMS. Rather, we work with what we receive. We label that. We code and label and analyze the data to derive insights in a way that not very many organizations are able to do that.
Samuel, I'm just mindful looking at the clock that we have just about 5 minutes, and I do want to get a few questions. If you don't mind winding up your presentation, because I can see some interesting questions coming your way as well.
Yes, I'm in fact finishing because this is my last slide. I think the other thing we have to balance is replicability. And this is about how tailoring a youth engagement platform can be done for different contexts. And finally, there's the issue of data protection. which is about balancing the moral imperative of acting on what we learn and protecting the confidentiality of what youth have told us. I think I will stop here, Namita, and I'm happy to respond to any questions that you might have.
Thank you so much, Samuel. So 2 questions in the chat box. One is about whether you have integrated climate change or green economy components. I'm not sure what the question means, but whether there is any consideration for the green economy in your model. And the second question, that's also something I was thinking, is how do you do that coding or analysis? Is it done by humans or is it an artificial intelligence? And I mean, just building on that last question, I was also thinking, what is the back end of your research? Like, I love the combination of asking open-ended questions, having one-on-one questions, and then having scale, and then making sense out of it. So what's that back end in which back end work that you do, that you are able to give, sort of make sense of this massive scale of answers and still sort of do it in a structured way? And you have like maybe a minute to respond, because there are 3 more questions for Emmanuel that I do want him to address. Okay,
I'll try. I think the way we do it, our analysis is done by the engagement is done by human beings, assisted by, of course, softwares that we have developed. We believe ethically that human beings deserve to be heard by fellow human beings. And so we have research assistants that label the data along themes. So the first way we treat the data is to label it and identify key themes that are running through. So rather than look at each message individually, it's to try and lump it together based on themes and then analyze the data from that. On the climate change issues, I think our capability can be used pretty much to address anything, if I understand the question well. So it is an open platform for citizen engagement with duty bearers or anyone else for that matter, and therefore it can be used pretty much for anything. But if the question is referring to how we deal with issues of carbon dioxide footprint and all that, we haven't done much in that regard.
Okay, thank you so much, Samuel. Thank you. That was a really fascinating model. Emmanuel, there are a few more questions for you, and you have 2 minutes because each of those questions are pretty interesting. And so the first question is, how do you, I mean, because you use radio and SMS, how are you able to teach the more complicated courses? It doesn't lend itself to teaching in small bits through the radio. So how do you do complicated or more complex courses? And the second is, how do you make sure that you are reaching people with disabilities? And is there certain technology solutions that you've used to include people with disabilities? And the third is, how did you make sure, like, what is your sense about, were you able to retain the quality of your courses when you switched to online? How do you track the fact that you're still delivering quality? Emmanuel? Are you with us, Emmanuel?
Yes, please, Namita. So, all right. Thanks a lot for those questions. Very good questions. I think I'll start with
Emmanuel, we can't hear you. I think you muted yourself. Emmanuel, I think you've muted yourself. Emmanuel, we can't hear you.
oops.
Okay. All right. I think we have run out of time. Emmanuel, you had muted yourself. we are out of time. Sorry. I was trying to tell you that you're muted. Nobody can hear you. But do you want to just take a few seconds to quickly respond? I think that there is some technology issue while we were talking about technology. But I just want to say a big thank you to our speakers for joining us. Thank you, Emmanuel. Thank you.
Sure. Can you hear me
Samuel.
now?
These were very interesting insights, and we will share the recording with all our participants. And a big thank you to you all for joining. And apologies that technology isn't always predictable. So thank you very much. Thank you.